Okay, now that is again a hardware issue my laptop has. So people were interested in game development. There are two things you can notice here. This is how the game GUI is right now. In the background, this terminal window that I have here is a debug window. So people were interested in how games work or how you can develop a game. You can look at this log, you can see what is going on. When you do a certain action inside the game, what is exactly going on. So now it's loading the resources. I need power here. I need power. इसका तो ड्रेन हो गया. This is the Dell. You Dell. With is my power cord. Don't take it too far. That's it. So my RAM is limited. So what they've done in their design vision is that the game would be a historical showcase of how things used to be at that point of time, and not just a simple simulation of the gaming world. So I will select a villager and then someone. There's some problem with the audio here. Audio on नहीं
Play a video.
Anyhow, so there's some problem with the audio. Right now there's no AI, no networking in the game. It's part of the design but not yet implemented. So they have the basic thing set up. You can play in a single player sandbox. All these actions, these entities, how the stuff is being loaded, everything has been implemented. Now, how can you use this to learn game development? That is what I'm interested in talking about. Because as I'm not part of this team, I cannot really tell you much about the 080 thing. Yeah. Okay, there is some audio problem. So the engine is written in C++, and the game scripting, all the level design and how entities react, how your combat system works, all those things are being coded in JavaScript. They're using OpenGL for the graphics part, OpenAL for the audio playback, Verbis for the audio formats, the OGG format. They're using the Boost C++ libraries for managing a lot of networking and other related stuff in the engine. And now, as a hobbyist game developer, say for me, what 080 presents is an opportunity to start active development in a game straight away. Let me quit that first. So this is a very pre-stable alpha release, so I'm having some issues right now. Unfortunately, this was the way I quit it. Right. So since they are open source now, you have access to this section of their website. You can now go and have a look at all the technical documentation they have done for the game. What is the whole architecture, the design, how the various systems work, what are the elements they have in the game, how are those classes defined, what are the objects, attributes present to you, what is the workflow. When you say a game engine, what exactly is a game engine? What does it do? How does it work? What are the logics involved in designing a game? So I have this sample of a couple of things. So this is a documentation of playing the game. Like this is a brief information of how you can play the current release of the game. But that's not what we're much interested in. So now this is the design document of the game. A design document is a document that will talk in very minute details about what all can a player do in a game. It's the design document which tells the programmer what all needs to be implemented in a game. It's one of the most important documents for a game. So this design document for Age of Empires, for example, would have a listing of all the civilizations, all the buildings, units you can make in the game, the tech tree, the combat system, the diplomacy, all the rules and logics that would be included in the game. And that's available here for you. The whole thing. So you can go and look at, say, how the seasons would work. Sorry, I clicked on the territories link. So here's the basic concept of how the territories would be defined. Anyone of you have played Rise of Nations? Okay. Rise of Nations has a territory system, right? You can go and control territories and influence your political border. So they included such a feature. They said that Age of Empires should have something like that before Rise of Nations started. So now they have this whole description of how these logic would work, how the civic centers would influence your control of an area, and why a player would do that, how it would like influence the gameplay elements that you will interact with, how the weather system would work, or what are the civilizations and how they would play out. So Romans, for example. So there's a basic description of what the Romans are, what would be their units, a complete description of all those units, how they would look, how they interact and react in the game world. Now this is a very critical document, the design document. Every company tries to protect their design document as much as possible because it is in a way the whole game. If I can steal EA's design document, I can make a game without EA which would compete with EA. So EA would protect their design documents. These guys have now made it available to you. So you can have a look at the design document, you can say that I don't agree with how 080 is doing things or how it's planning to achieve these functionalities. Let me do it all from myself, and you have everything available. So here they're talking about the engine, the pyrogenesis engine. They are telling you what the engine can do. In a later section, I'll show you the engine code, like how the engine is exactly doing these features. So all of that is available to you since the game is open source. Now here are instructions on how you can get the source, what is the directory structure of the game, the file system that is available to you. It is very essential because if you're joining a project to contribute code or develop things, you need to understand where is what. So they're explaining everything in detail. These are the main classes in the game: the world, the map, the whole simulation system, the player. Everything is out here in the open. So now, I was referring to a word called entities. Entities are any object inside the game. So, since they are open source, you have this complete reference available, which talks about what entities are in 080 and how they are like designed. So you want to make a game, you go, you have a look at this, you learn about these things. You have a very good reference material now to understand how a game project actually works, how a game works, what is required to develop a game, what all is needed to be done. Now, these are the attributes of that class. This talks about the GUI design, like what are the objectives of the GUI and how it will be designed, what are the instructions or guidelines for the designers, how it will be implemented, a listing of screens that would be required inside the game. So this is a simple development notepad where they're sharing notes on what has been done, what needs to be done. This is a bit about the AI as well. I'll skip the actors. Okay, now any of us here is a designer that who works with image editing softwares or 3D animation softwares. Which software do you use? Photoshop. Okay, so games usually involve a lot of image processing. Commercial companies can afford to use Photoshop and do things. Open source people generally use game. So now this document talks about the whole artistic vision of the game, how the game would look and feel. So as a designer, this document is of utmost relevance for you. It tells you when you're designing stuff for this game, how it should be designed and how it will be processed. So here's an art pipeline. Like how are they actually rendering the whole thing? So you take references from the design document, you create concepts of your art, you like make sketches and stuff, which goes into 3D software, you get the meshes and all the animations and the models, which then goes to the 2D software for creation of sprites, the accelerator for like creating behaviors like how a horse will knee or how a soldier will move, all those things. And through that it goes to the active viewer and the engine. So this is how the whole thing works. And all of this information is now available to you. So some basic art they are explaining how things would happen. So that's the final finished model. This is the concept art. We're talking about some tools you can use. Okay. That was a brief about 080 and how it's going open source is relevant to enthusiast game designers, developers. Now, this is a listing of things that need to be done in the game. Issues and bugs that are existing in the game or things that are yet to be implemented in the game. So, how can you contribute? You can simply join the team, pick up a ticket here and say that, okay, I'm going to contribute this particular functionality in the game. Or you can pick up the whole source code and modify it to your liking. So it's arranged according to various levels of urgency. Okay. So, questions? Do you want me to talk about something specific about the game or game development in general?
The game is coded in C++, so
I can't hear you that.
the game is structured in C++, you said.
The engine is written in C++.
So the logic and code, can I use it in the IDE like Visual Studio?
Yeah. They have like references to. This is just to let me distract a bit. The window that you see right now is an IRC window. This is the official channel of the 080 development team. You can see a listing of the team here. These are the people working on the game. And I was having a discussion with them about what do they want me to tell you people in the demo. So if you have questions which I might not be able to answer, you can also jump to this IRC channel. It's #080 on FakeNet and talk to the team straight up. Now to answer your question, what IDE you can use, basically you have to work on C++. So any IDE that supports C++, you can use it. They have specific references on how to set up the IDE and complete coding conventions that you will need to follow. So you can use any IDE.
And are there any other games like 080
Yeah, there are many open source games. So let me show some of them to you. One of my favorite games is called Free Civ. It's a clone of Civilization. Anyone has played Civilization? Okay, it's a turn-based empire building game. I'm on the wrong link, sorry. No, I'm on the right link.
It's the web version.
It's a web version. Org.
It's
So this is Free Civ. This is how it looks. It's a turn-based game. It gives you a world map. You have to build an empire, compete with rival empires. You can compete through diplomacy, through trade, through military might, through space exploration. And if you look at gaming history, Civilization by Sid Meier was one of the key turning points in the gaming of in the evolution of strategy gaming. Another game is Open Arena. So Open Arena is an open source content package for Quake. Are you guys aware that all 8 games are open sourced? Wolfenstein, Doom, Quake, all these games that it has developed, after a couple of years of their commercial performance, it has a policy of releasing these games as open source. So you get the whole engine available to you. The game data is licensed, so they don't release the game data. But if you have the original Quake, if you are talking about Quake for example, so if you have the Quake data, the WAD files, WAD, you can like take the engine, add those WAD files and play the game for free. And with the source code available to you, you can like add new features, you can mod the game, you can like create a new game out of the whole thing. You can do that. So Open Arena is a example of such a thing. What they have done is they have taken the Quake 3 engine, created their own data for the game and packaged it as Open Arena. There is another game that's called Simutrans. It's a transport simulation game. Simutrans was started, development started somewhere around 97, 98. In those times, the resources available for game developers were not that great. Most of the games had a 32 cross 32 pixel grid they used to use for sprites. So the initial game was made with that sprite size, 32 pixel by 32 pixel. You saw some packs being mentioned here, pack 64, pack 128. So when they started developing this game, they started with the pack 32-bit pixel dimension. And all the models and everything was handmade in software like Paint. These are pixel drawings developed in these cells of 32 pixels in 97, 98. Since then, the game grew very large. Simutrans is a very complex game. It's a simple game of managing transportation systems across cities in a state or country. And you run this transport company. Your objective is to create these transportation routes, run transportation services, and earn revenue. And as a consequence of your actions, the whole economic environment of that city is influenced. So towns can grow because of your efforts, and they can also die. So it's a very complex game. So as we advance with technologies available to game developers, they decided to continue with the same reference model they had. So the only difference they made was they increased the pixel limits from 32 bits to 64 bits. So 64 pixels, 64 or 64. So that's the pack 64. So it's richer in detail than 32 pixel grid. Later on, in around 2002, they added the 128 pixel model. So these are some open source games. There's a huge list of open source games. Since I'm running Ubuntu, I can actually show you. There's a huge list of open source games available. So, if you're interested in game development, these open source games present a huge opportunity for you to understand how these games work and how you can make your own game. Did you guys know that there's an open source Counter-Strike version as well? Which one? That's not open source, is it? Is it?
Find the code for it.
Okay. But I was referring to Counter-Strike 2D. So there's an open source project where people made Counter-Strike from scratch in a 2D format. So it's a top-down view of Counter-Strike, 2D, not 3D. And it plays out like the same game. So you can also look at that. I know there are a lot of Counter-Strike fans here. Any clans here? Anyone part of the Counter-Strike clan? What's the clan called?
Satanic Saints.
Satanic Saints. And you participate in contests, tournaments.
Yeah, not now.
It's a Bitsian clan only. Okay. Any other questions? So, any other questions?
What all left?
What all?
Is left? How long? What you are going to talk more about?
No, my talk is over.
Okay.
Question means it's over.
No,
I hope I was not that boring here.
no, I'm not saying like we moved from 080 to other things or just like
See, people asked me about some other open source games, so I just showed them. My talk was primarily about 08.
yeah. I attended the entire thing.
Okay. So, some other questions? Okay, I have a question. The 08 team is actually like expecting a feedback from me. They're expecting to hear what you guys thought of 080 and would you be interested in contributing or being part of that project. So what should I tell them? Nothing.
Yeah, we can.
I didn't get that.
Yeah, we can be part of it.
You would like to contribute. But what do you think of the game right now? Graphics are not that great. Okay. What else?
They are not.
They're not playing?
They There are not many features and it's in the development stage right now.
Yeah, it's in the open source projects that tend to stay in the development stage. So even if they have a final release, they'll still be in the development stage, adding new functionalities. So it's like a perpetual state for them. Features, I really didn't highlight the features they have right now, but there's a huge list of features, so you can check that. I disagree with that part, that there are not many features. I like skipped the features part.
I didn't get that because I didn't.
Yeah, I skipped it. So that's it. The graphics quality is not that great. Okay, that's feedback. Anything else? Okay, so the next talk.